Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode number 14 of UBT Live. That never gets old. The numbers just keep rising. I just keep getting older. So, as you all know, my name is Roger Phipps. I am COO and founder for Seven Lights Marketing Agency, Bird Eye View Inc., Boss Leadership Solutions, and I'm your consultant for everything else business, leadership, ops, and tech. And on this week's show, I'm excited to talk about networking, which is crucial to every business owner or leader. And I've been made aware by Josh that it should be called connecting. So I wanted to get that in there before he came on. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him on since I got that out there now. Welcome to the stream, Josh. Actually, welcome back this week.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a multitude of weeks of connecting for me. So it's client work connecting, and I appreciate taking a brief break when I wasn't available, but I love being back.
Well, you get a lot of levity around here because of your hijinks in the hot car in the South. So nobody questions your commitment to UBT Live. So thank you for joining me this week. Unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Powers. Rob's out this week again. He is helping his other business partner out. They have a kind of an emergency situation. They lost some key players, and he's helping out there. And then Alan, we gave him the night off. He's got a few things going on his side as well. So it's just you and I tonight. So unfortunately for everyone, they've got the people that are probably the most extroverted on the stream. So there's going to be a lot of talking tonight.
It could be.
But it's a great topic that you have a lot to say about too. So, maybe this week I can take a step back a little bit and just listen. So without further ado, we're going to be talking about networking and or connecting and or submit adjective here. It doesn't really matter what it is. And our first topic is just to kind of talk about networking tools, right? Networking is super important to all businesses. And that's whether you're working the corporate life, you're a business leader, you're looking for your next role, or you're looking to connect with others as an entrepreneur as either potential future business, as a referral partner, or just a peer that you can lean on to ask questions when you inevitably run into a tough situation. So networking is super key to business in all aspects of it. So let's start with the tools that you use. So Josh, I'm going to start with you this week. I'm going to let you share a few of the tools that you use and have found success with.
Sure. And just a quick step back. The reason I like connection more than networking, because networking, quote unquote, has been beaten into your heads of how you meet people and move ahead and how you do better in business or in life. And true. But first of all, as a technologist, networking means many things, right? There could be a server rack. Networking can be when we connect together. But when I say networking where we can connect together, that's really the core of it. It's connections and life and our species are built on connections. So I use that term a lot because there's a lot of people who think, oh, I don't want to go to a networking event, and feel like it's a pejorative term. But connecting kind of fits a little bit better, and it doesn't have that connotation. Not too many people are like, I don't want to connect. So let me start there, because that's why it's something that I'm pretty passionate about, because that term feels a little bit better to me personally. And when I talk about it with others, sometimes resonates. So the tools, I want to be clear. You're talking about offline tools to connect people.
Well,
correct?
I mean, it could be online tools. I think that's both. Just the different ways that different tools that you use to connect with people.
So to me, I'll separate business and personal a little bit. on the business side, I know it's business talk, but personal can loop back in. That's where I'm gonna go there, right? So on the business side, the biggest thing that I use right now, other than the things we're developing, is LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is an amazing connecting tool. It's had lots of iterations. And it's interesting because if you're just someone maybe looking for a job, you might view LinkedIn in one way. If you are someone who is a student or younger in their career, you might view LinkedIn another way. But business owners view LinkedIn in a third way. So LinkedIn is a great tool for connecting. For example, I was at a conference this week. It's actually the ending party is happening right now, but that's the dedication. We're doing it live, right? So at that convention, called Ilticon. I actually have the Ilticon Bacon sweatshirt on me right now, a T-shirt on me right now. It's sponsored by Bacon usually. So at that connecting event, a a woman who wants to be a lawyer in the United States, who's born and lives in Korea, took her own funding to fly to Orlando. It's a local to me event, and put herself up in a hotel to volunteer to learn more about US based law and legal technology. And her name is Nina, and she's wonderful. And when I talked about how you're going to connect with people, because this is exactly what we talked about, I asked if she had LinkedIn. No. You're in the middle of a conference with 3,400 people. Almost every one of those people have LinkedIn. So while there was a conference app, the first thing we told her was download link. And this is 2 days before the conference. Download LinkedIn and put in some conversations, because she's going to want to connect after she comes home. And she's been taking the LSAT and getting into some law schools. It sounds like from her background. She's very intelligent, and she's a cellist. She's just a wonderful person, and volunteering for an entire week just to learn in America. But LinkedIn is that tool that she's going to use when she goes back home. And maybe when she's a 1L, if you're familiar with law, when you're in your first year, it's called the 1L. Maybe when she's a 1L and looking for internships, he can go back to LinkedIn and talk with all these people and say, hey, remember me? I volunteered at this conference called Ilticon, and we connected on LinkedIn. That is one of the best tools for connections that I've seen. I do use Facebook at times for personal and professional use. I have used Twitter, X formerly known as Twitter, to do some of that. That has changed over time, and not necessarily because of Elon Musk per se, but Twitter itself has changed over the last 10, 15 years. I know I'm not doing it yet, but a lot of people connect on Instagram. And that's not necessarily my target audience, but there's a lot of business transacted there. And I've tried Threads. It's just not working for me yet. So to me, the best way to connect is online, is usually after you've met in person, and find something that makes your connection a little sticky. Like, it's not just someone you remember one time from like the 10X event downtown Orlando today, and then you saw a face and you're gone. So those are the things I've used heavily on LinkedIn, very heavily on LinkedIn. But
Okay.
yeah.
So let me kind of jump in here, because I think the LinkedIn segue actually segues very well to our next topic, right? So, but for now, just on the tools and a high level overview of tools, LinkedIn is obviously a great tool that a lot of people use. It's kind of morphed. So it started off as a place to find jobs, right? Yeah. And it was basically a job board. Then it started sprinkling in groups, right? So now you're finding groups of like-minded individuals that are talking about various topics within an industry, right? Which is also a plus, and that's a way to connect and collaborate. And then it turned into a sales tool, right? Which
Yes.
a lot of people use that for now. And quite frankly, it's one of those things where I don't know it's almost got to a point for a while there where my inbox just kept blowing up with those tools. And then there were automations that were added to it and third parties who can automate that interactive process, right? So LinkedIn for me is a great tool for connecting and collaborating. However, it is a secondary tool for me, right? So it's not the primary tool. LinkedIn is kind of the repository where you continue the conversation when you leave the other tools. Another tool that I have found recently that's really, really good for connecting with people for collaboration and referrals is a tool called Alignable. So I've been using that. And it's basically like a mix between LinkedIn and kind of like not Facebook, like a LinkedIn group together, but it's all business owners, right? And it's all referrals. So basically, the idea is that you have a group of business owners that are all on this page. You're trying to find other business owners to either learn about them and potentially have business with them or refer them to others that are within your network. And then those folks I'm adding on LinkedIn as well. So the way Alignable works is, they have different groups where you can discuss various things, or people can post, hey, I'm looking for XYZ, right? Then they have a tool, which I think is really cool, and I've been using a lot lately, which is called Smart Connect. And that's where you're basically dropped into a speed dating for connections, right? So you're dropped in with like 200 other business owners. It randomly selects business owners, and each session is 7 minutes long, and you're on a timer. Now, they say you're only supposed to be talking about yourselves and you're not supposed to be hard selling, which most people align with that. But people tell people what they do too. And, then you find business that way. I found 8 prospects through that, participating in 4 of those events in the span of a week and a half. So it's a great tool if you're leveraging networking to try to drive sales. The other thing is there's tools like Dripify, and some people are aware of these or not, right? And there's other tools that are out there as well that do the same thing. But basically, for those of you that are familiar with drip campaigns and emails, what it does is it automates conversations, and it can do lots of different things, right? It can like things. It can, respond to things. It can reshare things. It can repost things. It can do all of these things that you do as individuals. So, but it just automates it, and that works within LinkedIn. So that's a pretty cool tool as well. What I would suggest is you don't use it like most salespeople. Use it to actually build your connections, because the sales come from the relationships, not the other way around, right? So, all right. So moving on, we'll segue to our second topic, which for this week is going to also be LinkedIn based, which is InMail. So Josh is really, really, really good with LinkedIn and how he writes his posts. And I'm interested to hear what has worked for you and what hasn't worked for you with regard to InMail.
So, as I usually do, I'm going to go a step back and then a step forward, because I know you use Dripify, and I want to say a couple of things to the audience. One, theoretically, that's not supposed to happen and is a quote third-party app, which are illegal on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn has probably kicked out no one who has used it as a reasonable, normal, slow setting. It's usually when you use things incorrectly. And to note, I agree with Roger. Most people will take a Dripify campaign or any type of drip campaign on LinkedIn and spam the living heck out of people poorly on LinkedIn. I've seen them. You've probably, listener, viewer, you've probably seen them, and you know what that feels like. So I'm glad Roger said that at the end, because some people just like, oh, new tool, dump a whole stack of ideas in there and spam the living heck out of people. And that doesn't work because that's not building connections. But at the end, Roger had a great point. You could have that do something light touch, but you have to be active. And LinkedIn is something that I've curated and worked on a lot with only one real tool, and I might get rid of it. It was a free beta. Now they're going to paid, and I think they overshot. Personal opinion, they overshot a little bit their value. But maybe for others, it's amazing. I don't know. But for LinkedIn, authenticity kills. It is the one thing you can do that no one else can do. And when you act authentically, and when you are thinking about others and not doing the me stuff, hey, I have it's Tech Think Tank. Hey, it's 7 Lights, right? If you're talking about others and you're providing information and enlightening, empowering, and giving people their roses, typically over time things get back to you. So the algorithm in LinkedIn has changed a bit. So I doubled my my subscriber, or whatever you want to call it, connection count in about 3 or 4 months, when I actually actively started doing those type of things. And understanding kind of what happens on mobile versus the actual screen is useful. And I'll get to InMails. I know it's part of the topic, but I'll get there. But knowing how to curate and do that is helpful. Knowing what resonates is helpful, but you can build in public and figure it out live. Also, one of the best things about LinkedIn and that content is it lasts. It's not like a tweet where you're probably never going to see it again, or a post, or whatever they're calling it now, or a thread or whatever. LinkedIn kind of gets sticky because when someone follows you, they see a lot of your content and it kind of goes back. I actually had someone bump up something I posted 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they started getting traction again based off of connections at this conference. So when it comes to writing InMails and really good cold or even warm connection content, and I'll assume an InMail for most people is going to be someone you're not connected with, the idea of brevity is key. And it's not something that a ChatGPT usually can do, nor automated tools. Knowing how to get to someone and doing something delightful or interesting quickly is hard. So here's what I would say to anyone who wants to write an email or an InMail or email to a cold contact. If you want to do it well, and if you're selling something that's $10 a user a month, you might not do this. But if you're selling something that's $10,000 or up, it only takes a couple of minutes. For example, let's just use Roger. If you want to send a cold email to Roger, you don't have to worry too much about it, because he'll probably take most of your emails unless he's too busy. But the reality is, if you wanted to do that, first of all, you could just listen to these podcasts and learn more about him. You probably won't. That takes too much time. You could just go to his profile on LinkedIn and learn a bit about him. You can put his name in a search engine and learn a little bit more about him. Once you get 1 or 2 interesting pieces of information that are hobbies or likes, then you can use that in your subject of an email, or even the first line. And note, almost nothing about that first cold contact is about you. You should not be selling anything. You shouldn't barely even talk about what you do for the most part. If you want to take a pain point and try to ask about that, perfect. But so to Roger, I mean, the first thing off the top of my head is I'd probably do something UCF based. And if I'm not an alumni, that's cool too. Say you're a alumni, or you are from another Big 12 school. That's perfect. It's like, am I going to see you in Ames? ? Like, that probably would get an attention of someone from any of the new Big 12 schools that are football or otherwise related or interested. So it's those type of, are you going to Ames? That's 5 words. It's probably one too many. That's like the first part of an InMail, or first part of an email, or a subject of an email, to get some attention. And that whole InMail, maybe 50 words, maybe less. And the whole goal is to maybe take a pain point Small pain point, probably at the end, but the first part is building connection. So to write an email for me, the way I do it is I take about a minute or two to find out something about the person. And you can AI some of that. You can use tools to figure some of that out. I do it by hand just because that's the way I roll. Find something that's interesting that we can talk about or relate to within reason, not feel too spammy about it. Put it up top, have a quick pain point, like maybe a small piece somewhere on the bottom, and just say, hey, using Roger again. Well, I shouldn't say going to Manhattan, ? Welcome to the Big 12. Manhattan, Kansas on your radar, right? Or something related to that. And even if you don't put anything else in there, or even a small pain point, like it seems like you're doing a lot of businesses. Have you thought about an administrative assistant or something like that, right? It might have to be a pain point. It might not be his pain point, but something maybe small in there. To me, those are the best cold emails, because if there's a pain and a gain to be made off of it, we can continue the conversation. If not, that's okay. Or if you're just trying to purely connect, do something relatable to both of you. But what not to do. We don't really have a segment for that, so I can go off on that in a little bit if you want to join in, and then we can go to the other side of that. That's perfectly fine.
Well, there's a few things I'd like to say, because actually last week we kind of talked about what not to do.
Okay,
right?
okay.
So
that's what I get for not being here.
Yeah. So, or watching it back.
I've been at a conference the entire time.
Wow.
I've been at a conference. I'm doing business development.
See,
I'm giving out awards for writing really good content. And I'll tell you.
Mine. I write really good content.
You weren't doing business development at this conference, but I will tell you, I did post on LinkedIn today about things you should do in marketing content to large conferences. And there's something to note. Another LinkedIn thing. You might not think everything you're talking about on LinkedIn, you may see it on LinkedIn, but there's this shadow market of LinkedIn that most people don't know about, where your content is shared off of the site. I had someone tell me they shared with their friend about this post that I made, and that friend basically said, yep, that is everything you should be doing in email marketing. This person has almost 100,000 followers and gets paid a lot of money to help people do this and ghostwrite for them. Very well known in the community. I'll try to, she's not a UCF business grad, but she did grow up in Florida, so maybe she can fit. If we can ever get her on, I'd love to.
As long as she didn't go to the directionally challenged school to the west.
I do not believe so. So. But the reality is, these things all happen in a certain way, and everyone who's been a decision maker, even business owners, you've seen the bad emails. I guess we've talked about, and I was unfortunately not on it in the previous episode. So yeah.
I specifically called somebody out, like on air. So. Okay. And provided an example of why I will not be talking to this person. So, there's a few things I do want to say here, because that was the communication episode. But a few things I want to say as far as the LinkedIn and Dripify is concerned. They do have built into the software so that you're staying below the threshold.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not going to quote unquote spam and drop like 1,000 drips all at the same time. It actually spaces it out. You also control how often you touch each individual, right? So how you space it out, all that other fun stuff. Now, that all being said, you said a lot, so there's a lot to actually unpack in there.
Sorry.
As far as InMail is concerned, for me, I tend to go into building connections first that I have commonality with. So not going and finding something. I tend to try to talk to people who I have commonality with. And then, when I'm talking about that, I'm truly going into it with a conversation about expanding my network and seeing what value I can bring to them as much as the value that they can bring to me. And by that, I mean, I'm going to talk to them to see if I'm a referral partner for them. I'm going to talk to them about, what value I can have when we have the conversation. None of my stuff talks about sales. None of it. And your connection rate, the amount of times that you're going to be able to connect with someone, is much, much higher if you're connecting on that commonality and not connecting on a sales pitch. Because I don't want to talk to you if that's the only reason you want to connect, because then you're just going to spam it. It's like when I have 7 or 8 different direct messages from somebody and I haven't responded, that tells me you're not actually doing it. You've got some sort of tool that's doing it. And I'm turned off by that, right? The other thing is once you make that connection, that InMail or that Dripify campaign or whatever is just to make the connection. Then you have to pick up the football, right? And say, hey, I'd like to have a digital cup of coffee with you, right? I'd like to have a digital cup of coffee with you. That's where you have a full conversation, right? And you have that full conversation with that person, and then you expand on how you can help each other. And then the commonality and where, you may be able to provide value comes into play. The InMail, I agree, should be short. It should be to the point. I'm not sure if 5 words would probably be my first choice. I'd probably want something a little bit more than that. But brevity, to your point, is definitely a plus. Yeah. And in addition to that, make sure that there's commonality and no sales approach. And whatever you do, and this was a lesson from last week, is don't put anything negative in there, right? Don't say, hey, I found 10 errors on your site. Or, hey, you suck at SEO. I can help you because I'm an SEO genius, right? Yeah. And then don't target, be aware of who you're targeting with your message too. If you are an authority on SEO and you're talking to someone who runs a marketing agency, right? You don't want to say, hey, you need SEO, blah, 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 etc., right? Have that conversation as a peer and talk about how, you can connect and see how you can work together versus the other way around. And that's what I'm going to say with InMail. So basically, make sure it's brief. Make sure you have something commonality, whether you have Josh's approach where you're finding something, and that's perfectly fine. Or if you take my approach, which is I reach out to people that I already have commonality with, and I'm just tapping into that. Now, the one other place that I'll say as far as InMail and connecting and networking is how to use it for job searches. We haven't even covered that. So one of the things that you want to do when you're searching for a job, or you're interested in applying for a job, or you've applied for the job, is you want to make sure that you're connecting not necessarily with the hiring manager, but some peers, right, of that hiring manager, right? And it's not, hey, I'm interested in that job. What do you think? Could you put a good word in for me? It's trying to build some traction with them, trying to build some connection with them, asking them questions like, that are industry specific. Like, what do you think about this particular topic in cybersecurity, for example, right? And after you build that relationship and that rapport, and then let them talk about it. And then that way you can demonstrate your knowledge of it by having a conversation about it, right? Don't go into that. But it's a great tool because as they're going through the hiring process, if your name comes up, or later on, if you happen to mention that, that I noticed this job role was open that I'm interested in, then they will say to the other person, hey, have you looked at this particular candidate? They're pretty knowledgeable, right? Because you've got to hit it 95% right to make it past the bot that's looking at your resume to make sure it's matching what they're looking for. Otherwise, you don't even get looked at. So, anything you can do to do that, if you show up on posts of their peers, they're going to be like, oh, I saw this guy's name. Let me go look at this a little bit closer, right? And it may not even be that particular job, but you're building rapport for other jobs that may be in the industry or other jobs that may come up later on, right? You're building a network for a reason. Anything quick to add to that, Josh, before we move on?
So just to that specific point, that works both in job hunts and if you're trying to either close contracts or open up get to the first couple of meetings. So there is an AGOE sequence that starts with a email and a LinkedIn, and there's a whole way of sequencing this out. I don't do that myself, but if I'm trying to close something or if I'm trying to learn more about something, I'll do that same thing, kind of go laterally, if you will, and make connections with other parts of the organization. And sometimes I'll do this months and months ahead of time to make sure that over time they've seen you before. And I will tell you also, if you're trying to do it both for jobs or for business development, building in public can help. Posting frequently can help, but that's one of the best things about LinkedIn specifically. There's only about 1% of users that actually are active posters. So, and create content. So even if you just create, if you're all the people in my development team, I ask them to create content, because not even for Tech Think Tank, just for themselves, because there's not many like very knowledgeable developers like, oh yeah, LinkedIn is where I'm going to build my connections. So I agree with that. It's definitely not just, hey, hiring partner, hey, look at me, look at me. But if you go a little bit laterally, you might be able to get into the conversation behind the scenes and you don't even know it.
Yep. Okay, so next topic, we're going to talk about in-person networking. So we've been talking a lot about tech. And actually, I do want to add one piece of tech to that. Traditionally, when you've gone into in-person marketing, there's a point where you're exchanging contact information, right? And there's a lot of tools out there now that allow you to do that digitally. So you can get rid of cards altogether.
Yeah.
For example, I use something called Popl. And what Popl does is it provides you a digital card. It scans it with a code, right? Picks it up through your camera. So you're showing the other person your phone. They're just pointing their camera at it. And then it loads all of your information into their contacts. And they also enter in their information, and it populates into both your Popl and your contacts. The second cool thing about that is that it also ties into most of the major CRMs. So for example, we use HubSpot for our CRM. So that drops directly into HubSpot for us in our sales cycle there as well. So there's a lot of really, really cool things and cool alternatives. And quite frankly, it impresses a lot of people when you pull your phone out and they're just like, oh, that's cool, So, and it's not that expensive. So you don't have to use traditional cards. So let's talk about in-person networking. I'm going to set the stage. You're at a networking event for XYZ industry. Maybe you're at one of Josh's cool bowling events or an upcoming UBT Live event that we are going to be having as well, right? So you're walking around, you have a bunch of people that you don't know. How do you approach people? Let's start with that.
So here's the first question you need to ask yourself. Are you introverted or extroverted? What fills your energy? Because for me, and probably you, Roger, that's not a problem. I could talk to anyone about anything. Now, it's useful for, say, we're at a UCF event or UCF affiliated event. We can just start at UCF. If you want to not start with your 30-second elevator pitch, which could be helpful in another aspect.
You should have, but that's an important point. You should have an elevator pitch, and not just you, but everybody in your organization should have your elevator pitch and should have it memorized and prepared.
Oh no, 100%. But I will say yes, but if you're at an event where you're connecting with people with like ideas and intent, like a UCF Business Talk Live event, guess what we're probably going to start with? UCF stuff, and that's okay too. And if you are a fan of UCF academia or sports, there's a lot you can talk about, even if you're kind of introverted. Because that's kind of, it might not engage you or give you the energy, but at least it's something relatable to everyone. If it's a random event, like not random because it was mostly legal technology, but I talked to hundreds of people I've never met in the last 3 days or so. And that's when elevator pitches can come in really well. What I like to do personally depends on my intent for being there. So at this ILTACON conferences where I was at, my intent was to talk about some spare time, which is my bowling event and social connection, both application and in-person business. So first thing I talk about is asking a question of intrigue to get the notice of people who are literally there trying to sell other stuff. And I'm only going to booths and things like that when no one else is around. But after I asked that question, and I actually have related the things in golf that most people don't like, and how much bowling is the antithesis of most of that. Not that golf is a perfectly fine sport, but my goal is to try to throw another idea into their minds. And I'll ask a very intriguing question, and I'm talking to business development representatives, salespeople, marketing people, and not one was like, I'm not interested. Just on the first line, which is a base question related to, would you be interested in something that would delight customers, that make them sticky, that exist or might bring them in the door, and leave it at that. And then you bite your tongue. I literally do that and listen. And usually that gets the conversation going too. So it really depends on your intent and what you're trying to do at the event. So in this idealistic idea of maybe a UBT live event, my goal there is just to have conversations. So I'd probably do something related to UCF. At this ILTACON, I was doing business development. So I had a 30-second elevator pitch on top of a question that makes them feel some type of something different than what they're used to getting at a conference. So to me, that's some of the tools and tips and tricks that I use. But the number one thing I do, which I'm not doing now, but this is not the intent for that, is I do my best to say something. Literally, I have to bite my tongue because I like talking, as you well know, and listen. Because listening is where you're going to get the most feedback, and you're going to get the most connection, or things you can connect to.
Yeah. So like I'm gonna take this a different way, right? At a 30,000 foot level, right?
Sure.
So I'm gonna pull back. So when it comes to going to an event, a networking event, usually it's themed. Somebody's throwing the event. It's not just random business owners coming together for a beer and a conversation, right? That's not how this works. So when you're at a networking event, whatever that commonality is, and again, you're going to hear me say this over and over again, that should be your conversation or the point of the conversation, right? It's a hey, hello, and my name is, and something associated with either the event, right? That you just saw or heard or whatever, if there's a speaker or something, or whatever that commonality is that brought you together, right? So, it could be a question like, where are you from, to get them talking, if it's attended from out of town. If it's a local event, you might know that, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to have that commonality and you're going to lead with that. And then when you start having those conversations, I do agree with you, Josh, that asking questions is important. Asking questions means that other people are having to be vulnerable and tell you information about themselves that you can then riff off of and build and nurture a relationship. Whether you're talking about marketing, or whether you're talking about connecting with people, it's kind of the same process. It goes back to my rules that you hear me talk about all the time. People do business with people they like, right? And the conversation's not about your work. It's not about what you do. It's not about what you offer. It's about building a bond. And then once you leave that conversation, right? That's when it's hey, let's catch up. Here's my information. You pop out your cell phone with your Popple card and they scan it and you're good to go and you move on to the next group, right? So that's a key. Also, another thing on in-person networking events, if there's other people there that you know, go talk to them because they'll know more people too. So just like on LinkedIn or anything else, you're combining forces when it comes to your network within the networking event, which then of course leads to connecting with others. So that's a key to maximizing the potential of the event, because if it's a large event, you're not going to be able to talk to 1,300 people, right? You're going to be able to talk to a few, but you want to make sure that they're quick. And then, the other part about that is, okay, now you've met some people, you've gone, if there's an event like a bowling, make sure you're walking around and mingling, right? Don't just stay in your corner. Don't be afraid to go and introduce yourself. And if you notice someone is a little uncomfortable, smile, use your body language, right? That's a big thing. Like whenever I go to these alignable events, I come in not necessarily with a big personality, but a big smile, and I say, hello, how are you? Right? That energy is infectious. It makes them feel at ease. So make sure that you're using that and ask questions. Now, don't be overzealous over to the top, right? Where you're coming across as a blowhard. You don't want that, especially with folks that are introverted, right? But you do want a big smile. You do want to be inviting. You do want to shake hands, even the way you shake hands. Don't shake hands vertically. Shake hands like this and pull that person in and put the other hand on top, or shake hands like this. Don't do it vertically like this. Do it sideways. It's a different expression that has more warmth when you're shaking hands. So do it sideways, and by doing that, you're allowing that other person to feel more comfortable in that exchange. It's human behavior. It's wired. It's psychologically sound and proven. So those are some things that I would say about networking events. And make sure you follow up. When you meet somebody, don't just let them sit there. If you follow up with, once you sit there, follow up with them. Send them an email within the next week. Not the next day, but like within the next week. Hey, it was great meeting you, blah, blah, blah. And invite them for more interaction. And then you can start talking about the things that you might be able to help them with and what they might be able to help you with. So, Josh, anything to add to that?
Oh, tons. I'm typing them down, which is good. So let me go from what the last thing you said and a little back up. So all the people that I've had contact with over the last 3+ days at this event, you have 14 days to follow up. After 14 days, you're kind of past you might be past their memory in a day, but you can jog a memory. You can work with them. 14 days is probably where you have the best time to reconnect and either follow through or follow up, depending on the enthusiasm. So I was talking with a vendor literally this afternoon that said, if you got all these decision makers in a room, I'll be open. If you can get all these decision makers in a room, I'll throw 40 grand at it. I'm like, okay, let's figure out how to do this. So I connected with them immediately, not because of the money, because of the enthusiasm. I said, all right, let's get on the calendar when we're both all back in the office, not at this conference, and let's figure out how we can work on this together, right? Because they want something. I want to get these decision makers in a room too. Let's figure it out. So, but I think after 14 days, you can definitely re-engage, but it might take a little bit of reminders of why this conversation is happening. Going a little bit back. So you're talking about walking a room. Walking a room is great, but sometimes you have to exfiltrate yourself from a conversation or find a nice path to do so. Usually my way to do that is getting another drink or having to excuse myself for the restroom or to find food. Because one of those three things everyone relates to, and you can do all those things and then find someone else in the conversation. As long as you're taking whatever you had around you with you, you usually can exit a conversation. Not that you don't want to, but if you want to navigate a room a little bit more, those are some things that I have seen useful, and no one gets offended that you're going to get another drink. And then lastly, we were talking about Popple. Popple, can you sponsor this at least? So we're talking about Popple, and I do like Popple, but
what was the coffee place we're trying to get to sponsor here too that we were talking about last time?
We got to figure all this stuff out. But on Popple, so here's something you can do for free. And almost everyone that listens to this or is watching this live has LinkedIn. Let's just say that. If you go on your LinkedIn app in your phone and you click on the search bar at the top, on the right-hand side, you're going to see a QR code. If you click on that, it gives you a QR code with your name, your image from LinkedIn, and your tagline with a QR code to your LinkedIn profile. What I do is I take that and either screenshot it or save it, and I put it on as the background of my phone. So when I'm at conferences, I always have, or any type of connecting event, I'll have that as the background. And in my phone, it's easy. It's an iPhone. You can press and hold and swap out backgrounds, and probably iPhone or the latest iOS or whatever. So I just put my kids right back right after I'm done with the conference. Literally did it within the last hour or so. But when I'm at the conference, all I have to do is press the button on my phone and get rid of notifications if I have to, show it to someone, and connect. And I do that often. Popple has a lot more oomph to it, but you can do this with LinkedIn and pay nothing.
Yeah, the big thing with, and I think that's great, actually. That's a great tip. I think for me, the value add with Popple is you get their information, it creates a contact, and it dumps it into the CRM. And if you've got your CRM set up that way, it will also drop them into an email drip. It'll drop them into whatever your sales funnel is as well.
Correct. I mean, if you're at that level of automation, yeah, absolutely. No, I completely understand. It's one piece of a bigger puzzle. If you
but I think it's a great tip that you just said, because I use that too, but I didn't think to make it as my wallpaper, because that makes life a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I show that at conferences all the time that don't have a third-party app that does that, and everyone's like, "What?" So yeah, that's usually, I'll either show that and when they ask, "Oh, what is that?" and then we'll have a conversation about that too. So yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, let's move on and transition to speaking engagements. You do a lot of these. I've done several of these over the years. How can you use speaking engagements to connect with people?
So we're talking about connecting tools. This is the connecting tool that's relatively new. That even if you're a professional speaker or not necessarily a professional speaker, I highly suggest I should drop my referral code in here. I've referred people who are getting paid 10 grand a presentation to this piece of software, and they're like, I didn't know that did that, which blows my mind when you're talking in front of 3,000 people and you don't know how to generate really good leads post. So let me talk about the tool and kind of how you use it. And if you don't use this tool, you can use this methodology in any presentation you give. So the tool I use is called Talkadot, Talkadot. And Talkadot is just it's a piece of software that allows you to do a quick survey, but it's built for professional speakers, because not only is it integrate into the largest platform for professional speaking CRMs, but it has a lead generation piece to it, which you can't get from a Google form or a Microsoft form. Because during this really quick, maybe 2 minutes or less grab of data, it asks the question, do you or anyone in your organizations have presentations like this? Or are you someone who hires or selects people for presentations? So if you're doing a presentation to 1,000 people and 10 or 20 people in that crowd could pay for you too, this piece of software pops that into its own small little CRM. If they say yes, gives a few other questions on the side, and gets back to regularly scheduled programming. It's great. Again, I should probably get them as an advertiser, but that is a great piece of connecting software because it can develop your future leads and you can get connections.
So let me ask you this, because I've had other tools that I've used in the past, right, where essentially you've put surveys out there and it pops in people's phones as a text message or whatever, and then they answer the survey and then displays live or whatever, right? So I've used that. How are they grabbing that information? Do those people have to log into Papadot, or like how does that work?
So two things. You talked about two separate pieces of software and Talkadot. You had Popple on the mind. So in this piece of so if you are using like Slidio or those type of tools, that's a use your phone, use a code, scan something, add in a question or a audience feedback, and that displays. That's one set of software. This is you're about 57 minutes or 56 minutes into a 1 hour presentation, and this is the methodology you should use this for all presentations. Before you get to your close, you add in the slide with the QR code. Talkadot also gives you a couple of codes where you can upload documents, or like if you want a free copy of this presentation, scan this. I'd love for you to fill out a quick. It'd be great if you can give me some feedback to make sure I'm doing what I'm doing well, and that'll take a minute or two. And when you fill in this information, if you fill in your email, it'll send you automatically the slide deck or
You're giving them something, right? And we talked about that last week, is trading information for value.
Correct. So you do that 3 minutes before the close, give them 2 minutes to do it. And when you kind of see not the top of people's heads, but you see them burying their phone, they're up here, then you go into your close. I'll tell you why to do it in that methodology in 2 ways in a second. But that's the way I leverage speaking engagements to get contacts and future speaking engagements and understanding if I did my job. Now, you don't need to use that piece of software. You can use a Google form, or you can use a Microsoft form. This one just is really meant for public speaking and to find your next gig. But here is one tip I give you, and this is from the keynote of the ILTACon, and I kind of talked to the woman afterwards. She did a great job, but she closed, then put up her QR code. If you're at a big enough conference and you're a big enough speaker, someone else controls someone else controls your slides after you say thank you. So her QR code in front of 2,000 to 3,000 people was off in less than a minute. It was up, but really, really quick. So that's why you have to put that slide before your close for twofold. One, it gives people a breather a little bit, gets them interactive before the close and make that impact. Plus, you can retain all of your data. And you're not waiting for the AV people in the back to hope they don't get rid of your slide. So that's how I gain connections through speaking engagements when I'm not out in the crowd, or I'm not doing a post tabletop session about what I've talked about.
Okay, cool. I think that's important too. The post tabletop discussion, mingling when you're not speaking. There's a lot of time in between that you are not up there speaking, but they see you as someone who has value enough to be able to speak at a conference. They're going to approach you.
Yes.
Right. And then, lastly, I hate to say this, but it's almost like a celebrity type status. Oh, I spoke to the keynote speaker at this event, blah, 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 3,000 people. You get equity and you get value for who you are. It's like a mini branding, right, for you, where you've been branded as someone who's knowledgeable enough to speak at this conference in front of all these people that all of them have paid for to be there, especially if it's a 3,000 person conference.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say is when you're making your when you speak, challenge people. If you challenge people, they're more memorable. Like one of the things that I used to use a lot, and this kind of goes contrary to what I said about using negativity. But I told people they sucked at something, an entire industry.
Yeah.
Right. And they did. I helped build a business to solve that problem. And it's now over $500 million in value, right? In 3.5 years. Speak to the problem, and it's okay to shock people because sometimes an industry needs to be shook.
Yeah.
Or shaken is the proper way, but I like to say shook. And if you do that, and then you come back and say the how and the why and everything like that, and you have that impact statement initially, they're going to remember you. amongst all the other speakers and conference members, they're going to remember you. So it's important to do that because that's a great talking point, because people will go back to that talking point and either challenge you or whatever when you're being approached. Okay. We talked about speaking engagements, conferences and events, and then we've got one more bullet after that. So conferences and events, any quick tips that we can share with everybody?
Quick tips on conferences and to make connections.
Yes.
Man, so a couple things. The question, what have you liked so far at this conference, usually gets people talking. So I use that a lot. How was your conference? Good questions. Again, asking questions and getting feedback, right? So I use
Not
that
how
a
much
lot.
did you drink last night after all the was there,
So this morning there were at least 4 people that had to get a reprint of their conference badges because they had drinks spilled on them. So at least at the time I got there, which was at like 9 o'clock, it wasn't that late. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you could talk about the cool event you went to. Like in this conference, some vendors took people out to Epcot or to Hollywood Studios, and you can go there. But truthfully, what I look for first timer badges. And because of this is a conference I've been to 15
that's interesting
plus years, and I talk to them because I know a lot about those conferences. If you've been to a conference a lot, I like first time badges to see how they're doing. And this specific conference and industry is a very familial industry. Like it's one of the better conferences I've been to at all. I've been to like Microsoft Ignite and Citrix Synergy when that was going, like the big 20,000 person conferences, and some small ones too. This is just a great group of people. So I like making sure first timers feel that too. So I talk to them just to get a feel of what they're doing. And, if you're a first timer, go to other first timers. You have something right in common right there. You've never been to this before.
So there are certain conferences, the bigger conferences, that have first timer events.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like there's a conference called the GAC for credit unions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you go there, if it's the first time you've been to the event, they host specific events for first timers after the conference normal hours are over.
Yeah, and I'd say if you've been to I've been to this conference for 15 years. I met at least 8 or 10 people easily that might actually do some business with me too, but are just new people I haven't seen. But there's definitely at least 50 to 100 people who have seen me and know who I am, or walking around and are like, hey. So to me, if you're very well known at a conference, find other people. If you're known in an event, if you're going to an event that you're known at, find other people. Like the best way to make connections you can continue and build and develop the things that of the people you know. But if you're trying to expand your group of friends, peers, potential clients, whatever, and expand your network might work there too, right? If we want to go back to that word, but you have to talk to other people. So to me, I am relative social butterfly. I try to talk to a lot of people. I also am heavy on the water and lighter on the liquor, because you don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if you're in sales, but you don't want to be that person. And if you're not someone that drinks a lot, and then you go like 4 or 5 martinis or margaritas deep, you might be that person. So I'm very light on I like imbibing at times, but especially when trying to connect, 1 or 2 maybe at this point.
So I'll say a couple of things. One, if you're at a conference and you got a booth, or you're at a conference or something like that, the first thing you want to do is especially if there's potential for B2B sales or B2B connections for people that have similar customer base as you do, get the list. There's always a list, which includes emails, phone numbers, blah, 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 from the conference before you go.
Yes.
Look at the booth map and identify who those people are, right? Because it's not just about the people that are working the floor that you're talking to, but it's also potential strategic partners, right? Either people that have complementary products or complementary clients that would take advantage of that. So that's one tip that I would give.
Absolutely.
The second tip is host an event, right? It doesn't matter, don't make it boring. Make it something that's unique or different that people actually want to go to, right?
Are you teeing me up? Is this
Josh wants everybody to go bowling, so you can co-opt Josh, and he will set up the bowling event for you. But even if it's just something a little bit,
low-key,
more traditional more traditional, right?
Yeah,
And make sure that you separate events for clients that you're trying to obtain and clients that you already have that you're trying to reward, right? For working with you, right? That's a different level of intimacy. It's almost like you hear us talk about lead nurturing. It's the same thing about client nurturing, right? It's your opportunity to have one-on-one time with them, get feedback, or just have fun and really figure out, build on that personal relationship, not just the business one. So make sure you have that. However, you need at least one ringer at your new client events, right? Someone who really loves you, right?
Yeah.
So make sure you bring at least one person to that event as well, because they can talk about all the great things that you have done for them, and they're a current client, right? So make sure you're doing that as well. Don't go into it blind, and don't just, make sure you have that segmentation so you can give that extra special care to those people that are already clients that are already paying you money, right? So give them that, make them feel special, and make it something memorable. And those are things that I'll say as well.
So I'll give you a real world example from Orlando from just this last event. There's a pretty big company that is trying to do new business development, and for a demo, you get a prize or something. And this was some bar kits or gift cards or whatever. That's the business development side of that. And that same company went to Shula's Steakhouse and basically rented out the entire. If you've ever been to Shula's in Orlando, they have the conference room on the side before you walk into the restaurant, which is deep. And they just rented out that entire space. And I'm sure there were about 50 to 100 fillets. No, it's not. This is a company with a B on it. So, but that's, or darn near close. But that's so the Shula's was for the existing clients. And that's, you can't do that and spend that time and money just to do business development. That's a whole nother level. But to keep and retain and make clients sticky, that's definitely a difference. So, and I agree with everything that Roger said, especially ringers are great too. That is a great way to get someone other than yourself to talk about you. So that's kind of my role at an upcoming Some Spare Time event in Orlando in a couple of weeks. So, but yeah, and use entertainment to delight. Having wonderful, memorable, delightful engagements and events and conversations with people across the board just makes life better. It really does. It helps with business too, but it just purely makes life better.
Yeah, and I think that, and it's not just conferences; it's also events. So if you host like a charity golf event or something like that, right? The clients that you, and I'll say this about that. I like going to play golf, but I don't play golf well, and I'm okay with that. Because if I do a charity golf event, my job is not to be the ringer. I have a ringer in our foursome. I have the client who likes to play golf that's on the cart with that ringer, right? And by that I mean a golf ringer, right?
Okay. Yeah,
and then I have me, and then maybe somebody else who doesn't care about as much about golf, but is a potential client on the other cart, right? And so what am I doing? We're playing best ball, and I'm doling out the drinks, right? Or whatever. So, I've got the bag full of ice on my cart, with drinks in it or whatever. You know what I mean? So that's my job, is to spend time not focusing on the golf game, but focusing on, relationships while I'm there, while the other person is playing the golf game and has the ringer who's going to help that person get close, if not win the tournament, which always makes for a fun event. So That's just one example in golf, right? So there are other events like Josh's bowling events that you might want to get a ringer bowler. I don't know how you could do that.
The answer is yes, and we do have that as part of our packages. I'm trying to get to like retired PBA bowlers too. We're working on some of those things. So yeah, I'm not a ringer in bowling. I'm good, but not that good. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, all you need to do is bring Brittany and throw Brittany on the team. All right. Moving on. So we're at 105. We've got one topic left. Networking in your everyday life. So what do I mean by that? So what I mean by that is you and your team, okay, not just you and your team should be networking at every opportunity. You're going to be talking to people all day, every day in any role that you have, whether it be vendors, whether it be clients, whether it be, if you're an accountant and you're talking to a bank because you're worrying about deposits or something like that, whatever that is, every person should be looking for opportunities to network, not sell necessarily, right? You can sell, but connect, right? Develop the connect and the relationship, because what you're doing is you're getting access to their group of connections. So it's like a group of 5 conference, right? Their group of connections. So now that we're power 4. I should say group of 6, right? Because the pack's on its way there too. So the group of 6 conferences. Sorry, folks. Football season's almost here. I'm excited. Next week, let's go. But anyway, the point is again, that connection is one, because it's nice to know people and they can provide you some sort of value on their own. If you have a problem with an insurance thing with another person or something and you want to ask your insurance guy, you can call the insurance guy and he can give you, advice or legal advice or, something on a rental space or an AC unit, whatever. Build those network of people, because eventually there's going to be something that they can help you with. Provide value for them. And also remember that you're setting the stage for the relationship, talking about what you do. And the closer you get in that relationship with that other person, the more likely they are that they're going to talk to someone about your services that's in their network, right? It's not all about the sale today. You build a big enough network, and eventually you're going to have those people come to you for work, and then you just keep rotating it, right? That's how that's going to work. If they find value in what you're telling them, if they find value and they feel like you're genuine, you're not just another cold call who's trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
Right? So build that network. Go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. We got past 107, but that's okay. So here, I agree with you. And to me, that's why I love building connections to start. And if business comes into it, that's fine. Great case in point. It is conference versus daily life, but it was my daily life yesterday. So I was at a conference event. It was an after party. People are drinking and eating. It was wonderful. And I had a conversation, a new person I haven't met before. And we're just chit-chatting about life. And then we get to connecting. I didn't have my badge with me, so I used my LinkedIn phone thing. And he's like, "Oh, that's cool." I connect, and he's like, "Oh, you know these two people? You must know what you're talking about," because they were other really wonderful people in the industry and brainiacs. To be fair, in legal tech and innovation, there's some people that really know what they're doing. And so the first part was just me.
So to be clear, Josh just said that was not him. That was other people.
I'm not, this isn't about me. It's about you. So just having these great connections and conversations, we continued the conversation. And when we're talking about other things, I eventually got to what I'm doing at Tech Think Tank and trying to help CIOs and people in operations have better alignment and whatever. And he said, "You need to talk to this person that I talked to yesterday. They're new in their role. They're new into legal and they need help." And this is someone I talked to less than 15 minutes, and contacted that person on LinkedIn and said, hey, this guy said that we should have a conversation, and I have a meeting with them next week. So it wasn't about business. It wasn't about me. We were just having a good conversation about the starting question in that was, how was your conference this week? So it was about them. It was about having a good connection. And when you're authentic, and like what you see here is me, and maybe even more so, right? I'm not good at like hiding who I am. What you see is what you get. And usually I don't even need caffeine for it. But that also shocks people. But when you are yourself, even whatever your true authentic self is, it shines and radiates. And that's why I build in public. That's why I talk about authenticity, because that's what people are aligned to. That's what people are attracted to. Roger smiles all the time. He has this upbeat demeanor. So when he says he's walking into a room and he's just smiling to get lift over one's spirits, that's facts. So so when the rising tide floats all boats, your attitude brings up the mood. Who you are authentically, no matter what it is, can draw people in, and that's how you get, to the business side. But it doesn't.
It makes you more approachable.
Yeah, and it doesn't start there. So when we're talking about InMails and whatever, right, going all the way back, when I say it's not about you, it's about the person you're talking to. That's the authentic part, because no one wants to get an InMail that you've all gotten, and you connect with this person or they follow you, and you get an avalanche of text about how they can help you. No one wants that. That's just not how business should work, and too many people are doing that. I'm trying to fight back against it. And even when Roger was talking about a Dripify campaign, but he said you're not spamming people, you're just trying to reach out and create a bit of connection automatically. Okay, that's cool. Because if you're just dropping in, hey, I can do all this stuff for you right at the first click, you're going to have a bad day.
Yeah, and I'll say this about that too. It's funny, like people almost have trauma about that, because like one of the things I do is I reach out to people about the stuff that UBT is trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with UCF, all the things, the show, how we're trying to aggregate the UCF business community, bring them together, encourage people to use each other for work, for different things, different skill sets and whatever. And I feel like when they read it, there's a lot of people that sit back and say, oh, that's a really, really cool idea, blah, 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 blah. But they hesitate, right? Or it's almost like, okay, I do a follow-up and I say, hey, let's get together and have a virtual cup of coffee. And then you get on the call with them, and some of them are like, why is this guy really wanting to talk to me? They're waiting for the sales pitch, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm not. You're a UCF business owner, business leader, business person, right? That I've identified. And I just want to build rapport with you and see how we can help, or you help, or, if you've expressed interest in helping us spread the word, how you can do that. And then when you leave it that way, it's almost like, okay, that's it. That's all we were going to talk about. And then they're like, oh, you see this like relief. They kept waiting the whole conversation for me to say, oh, and by the way, you need to use my marketing. Not that you don't need to use my marketing, right? Or some of my consulting or any of the other things that I do, right? That's not the point. The point is to build a connection with you, understand how we can help each other, what we do, and I'll offer to do something for them or be a resource for them. Now, I can't, because I do consulting, I can't do their whole strategic plan for them, right? But if they run into a problem or they have a tough question, I'm going to provide value. I'm going to answer that question for you and say, hey, this is what I would do. I mean, I do it with Josh. I do it with Alan. I do it with Rob. I do it with a lot of other people. That's something that, you're a UCF business owner. There's no catch, right? So The only catch that I will ask everybody to do is to follow us, right? Kind of share, like when you see this kind of stuff, help us get the message out, and use goldennightsclub.com, which it's not really for us because we don't get anything out of it. It's for you anyway, right?
Yeah.
And if you're watching it and you've lasted this long into our stream, right, then you're clearly getting some sort of value out of it, which is what the goal is. So, you know, help us help you. Use goldennightsclub.com. I was telling Josh last time we had a couple of new folks that had joined on the site. It's free. It's super easy. There's a search feature on there so you can see. And the goal is by the end of this year, we will have completed our first transaction between UCF Knights members. You know, once we've completed that transaction, we've done some business, because that is the ultimate goal. There's no fees, there's no nothing else. It's just there for you to find each other and to do business. And that's the goal with all of this. So with all that being said, do you have any quick closing thoughts?
I will tell you one quick story on all of that, and maybe it ties together. I don't know. So on goldennightsclub.com, there is someone new who just joined. His name is Frank. And on there, I believe Frank talked to you, Roger, maybe sometime this week, reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, Roger said this, you're someone I should have a conversation with. I'm okay, let's go. Talked a little bit, living near campus still, which is wonderful, around that area. I teach on campus 4 days a week this semester. So I'm like, let's just go to lunch or get tea. I'm not a coffee drinker. We had it's a couple.
I know, it's so disappointing.
Yeah.
You and Ellen.
But I'm telling you, it's better when you're speaking in public speaking. You want no caffeine and something that coats your throat nicely. That's tea. So anyway, we're going to catch up just from Roger reaching out, or even Frank maybe reaching out. I don't know that part of the story, but I'm going to have a conversation with another UCF alumni that I wouldn't
business owner
that wouldn't have met without this podcast live stream. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're really trying to just get people to work together better and help each other out. And, you know, maybe we'll have some events in Manhattan, Kansas, of all places, since now that's our, if you're a sports fan too. So that's
speaking of which, if you're a sports fan, if you've been watching the Orlando Sentinel or any other media recently, the TBT dollars, the tax dollars that we were talking about for UCF athletics, the commissioners really stepped up and kind of put kind of smacked the mayor's hands a little bit on that. And, you know, they are asking, and there's several UCF alum on there. Make sure you're sending letters of support for UCF's proposal to the six commissioners, because that is real dollars that will help provide real service. And also, UCF brings in about $91 million in additional TDT dollars every year. They're only asking for about $10 million a year. So I think that's a great ROI for the county. We should support that.
Well, and I know this is not UCF Sports Talk. That's the other one. But, I mean, I use Manhattan, Kansas as a very great example because I will be there. And I have clients actually in Kansas, but Manhattan, Kansas wasn't on my to-do list of places to visit. But maybe a client visit, because I work a lot in the South and Midwest right up the gut in Central Time Zone. But we're spending, between me and a couple of friends going out there, a couple of grand, maybe $1,000 or so each in Kansas, because we're part of this conference. If you don't think people in Ames, Iowa, and Manhattan, Kansas, and Lubbock, Texas are going to take a trip to Orlando and stay for not just a game, you're kidding yourself. I think it is.
Oh, dude, they're going to Disney. They're going they're going to Disney. Yeah. They're going to all those places, and those are not cheap. And that's more than the average rate. But even on the east side of town, right?
You're still nuts. It'll be great.
Yeah, they're still spending a lot of money. So
yeah, and I'm not using those locations as anything but places where lots of fans of the sports in those towns would probably want to come to one of the best tourist destinations in the country, right?
On the flip side of that is when you're using that as an example, there's a reason they have college towns. It's because the college builds the town and pays for the town. And when the games are in and all those tourists come in, that's their tourist season. Just like up here, we have the beaches during the summers and the spring break and whatever. That's where all the money is made for the entire year. It's the same way down there. So with all that being said, all right, Josh, where can people find you?
You can find me you can look up Tech Think Tank, and you can find me. You can look up Some Spare Time, which is the really cool event program that I'm putting together. It has an on and offline component. You just find me at Josh Lazar with the bowling ball icon on LinkedIn. If you need anything, just ask. I'm here to make the rising tide float all boats. That's the way I work.
All right, awesome. So for me, as I said, for all your marketing needs in small business, legal, medical, and higher education, video production, post-production, etc., you can reach me at r.phipps@sevenlights-agency.com. You can also visit the website, sevenlights-agency.com. Or for any of your consulting needs, you can also reach me at bossleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. And a couple of things to add this week. If you're in charge of cybersecurity, I actually have a really, really cool tool that I've been turned on to as well. You can reach me at ubtlive@gmail.com. I'd love to talk to you about it. And next week, we should have some more information about a small business lending or non-traditional lender that does corporate lending that may be involved as well. So I'm excited to talk about that and get the word out about them. Just a sneak peek. They are non-traditional, which means that you don't have to. They are not FDIC. They don't operate in FDIC or NCUA, so they don't have the same rules for underwriting. They can look at things differently than what a traditional financial institution does. And that also means they're going to look at your cash flow and base their decisions on some of that. So that's all I have for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, what date is next Thursday?
Next Thursday. Oh, we're getting almost into next month. That is the 31st of August.
And it's also...
Oh, we're not going to be live, are we?
We're not going to be live. So it's a Thursday night game. So folks, most of us will be at the game. Yeah. So we're going to, keep a lookout on our LinkedIn and on our Twitter account at ubtlive.com. And we will share when we will release it. We may pre-record it and send it out there and put it on our YouTube channel and LinkedIn. Or we may do another live show maybe on a Wednesday night instead. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. And the following week after that, we're actually going to have another UCF alum for another interview. So I'm excited about that. And he's going to talk to us about exit strategies from your business. So I'm excited about that. Thank you again for following along this week. If you have any questions, you can reach us, or if you have show topics or anything, at ubtlive@gmail.com. I'm Roger Phipps. That's Josh Lazar. And remember to like, subscribe, and grind.
You like that?